Come on in inside of the Pastor Study. We're here tonight for another great program, and we're glad to have you with us on tonight. I'm excited about this program, and I want to thank you all that joined us on last night. What an awesome conversation we had inside of the Pastor Study. We want to thank God for Pastor Starks that came on with us on last night, and also Pastor Harper as well. We just thank God for them. But on tonight, we have another great conversation, and I'm thankful for my co-host who's right back with me. Pastor Johnson, say hello to the people.
You said Pastor Johnson, who's right back with you. Where else I'm gonna go, baby? How y'all doing tonight? How y'all doing? We hope all is well. Look here, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, even though I hope that you see it. I need you to do those 4 things for me. What is that? I'm glad you asked. I need you to like. I need you to share. I need you to comment. And I need you to subscribe. What you subscribing to? Our YouTube channel, baby. It's Upathon. Look, please like, share, subscribe, comment right here inside the Pastor Study. Tonight, we got a great, oh my God, I'm going to say it again. Great show for you tonight. It's going to help you. It's going to help our community. It's going to help our churches. So look, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and tune in to this great dialogue on tonight. I'm Crunk. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, man.
I'm excited, man.
I'm excited too. Our other co-host, Pastor Marquise Collins, he's on assignment right now. Right. So he's actually going to pop in on just a few minutes. But we thank God on tonight that we got a great lineup. I'm excited. Now, I've been excited about this lineup for 3 weeks.
Well, to be honest with you, look here. This is a much needed dialogue. Tonight's conversation, what we're talking about. And I'm going to be honest with you. You know what? Can I tell?
Go ahead.
Guess what? Tonight, we're talking about, watch this now, the critical relationship between the church, the pastor, and the musician.
Woo, boy. That's a mouthful already.
Critical.
Yes, sir.
This is a very critical conversation, y'all.
Yeah.
A critical relationship between the church, the pastor, and the musician. Okay? How do they all coexist? I can't wait.
Oh, man, I can't wait till we dive into this thing on tonight. And we just thank God for all of you coming in. Y'all come on in, like, share, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube page on tonight. We're getting ready to get into our conversation, but let me introduce our guest. First of all, this young man, he's been around. I've been around him since I was a teenager. This young man has been on fire for God as a musician, servanthood. He preaches that, he practices it. He's been on over 33 national recordings. So I'm excited to have this young man. This young man is known all over. Y'all give it up for Brother Steve Lewis, who's on with us from Dallas, Texas. Say hello to the people, Doc.
Hello, my good people. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for the invite, man. I really appreciate this.
Tell them a little bit about yourself, Doc.
I have nothing. I'm just a poor black man trying to make it through this Rona. That's all I got.
No.
We know
better. We know better.
Man, we're so glad to have you. I know you have a busy schedule. You know, you're always working on somebody's project, somebody's music. And I was telling someone earlier that most of the time you're doing now, within the last probably 5 or 6 years, you've been doing more of the production side of music on your video. So I've got a lot of information from those videos, and a lot of people watch it. So we appreciate the information that you give.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Also, tonight, our other co-host has finally come on, Pastor Marquise Collins. Come on, say hello to the people, Doc.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all on tonight. Thank y'all for tuning to Inside the Pastor Study. Glad to see my co-hosts and friends, Pastor Jones and Pastor Marshall Johnson. And God bless our guests. Thank you for coming on the show tonight.
All right. Also, tonight I am so happy to have this young man. I'm going to officially call him my mentor now.
Yeah,
he's my mentor, dealing with this social media platform and whatnot. He's helped me out so much already.
Yeah.
But we got in contact a few weeks ago, and he was actually scheduled to do the show about 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And then the death of his father happened, so we actually canceled the show.
Right.
And in that opportunity, I was able to reach out to some more people I'd never even talked to.
Wow.
Who did I talk to? I talked to C-Dub.
C-Dub, that's right.
The man. I use his hoop triggers.
Yeah, Doc.
I talked to C-Dub in his absence, but we could never get that thing tied together. But tonight, the man is here. He is all the way from Newport News, Virginia. And on tonight, we got the man himself, Johnathon L. Brown. Come on in, Doc, and say hello to the people.
Hey, man, how you guys doing? Thank you for having me on tonight. Thank you so much for having me on tonight, guys.
All right, man. Tell them a little bit about yourself, sir.
Well, listen, I'm just an average guy. I love the Lord. Been a musician almost 30 years. Been all around playing, singing, working with music. Now in production. I own 2 media companies. So that's the mentoring part that he was talking about. Dealing with the social media production, but just basically, man, just here to help impart, give knowledge to those who need it, and just also we can all win, man. It's the winning season for everybody.
Amen.
Awesome, man.
Thanks so much.
Well, we're
bro.
here on tonight. We are getting ready to jump into this conversation. And on tonight, if you would, we're going to ask you one more time, please like, share, and comment on this live feed on tonight. We're getting ready to jump into the conversation. It's a heavy conversation, and I think a lot of people needs to talk about it. A lot of people needs to hear it. A lot of people need to communicate about this because I think we all can agree.
Yeah.
There has been down through the years some issues concerning the pastor, the church, and the musician. And I feel, and this is how we're going to lead it off, I feel that there has been some faulty communication between the 3 parties. And so I want us to just jump right in. I think we never get a sense when we are initially making the agreement that, yes, this musician is going to play for us, or we're going to start this relationship. I think we never get a sense of are they here to work, or are they here to work and worship? Brother Brown, what you got?
Oh, you want to start with me?
Yeah, let's start with you, Doc.
You sure you want to do it? Well, okay.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
You want to start with me? All right. You said, are they here to work or are they here to worship? That's what you were saying, correct? Your last little point.
Yes, sir.
Let me just say this. As a musician, I have played for many churches as an employee that I would never join as a member.
Okay.
Now I want you to process what I just said. As a musician, I have played for many churches as an employee that I would never join as a member. Most musicians that you hire, you got to look at it, you hired them. And so when you hired them, were they already going to your church? Were they already a member? and you just said, hey, you know what? I want to, we need somebody, and they just came up and just started filling in. You said, well, we want to go ahead and pay you, compensate you. We want to give you the full-time job and let you do it. Or was this somebody who heard you had an opening, or you was looking for somebody, and then you brought them in and they auditioned or played, and you said, we want to hire you? Well, 9 times out of 10, if you went through that process, no, they ain't there for the worship. They're there for a job, because that's the process of which you hired them. They weren't going to your church before you hired them, so you hired them as an employee. So it's kind of difficult to hire somebody as an employee, but then want to restrict them to pastoring them as a member. Problem is, they're not your member; they're an employee, because that's how you hired them. They were going to your church.
Right. Steve, come on in, Doc.
Oh man, yeah, this is gonna get good. I would say the same thing. I've run into the same issues with being a musician versus being a member. I'm very slow to join any ministry because I first of all want to find out not just from the talk, because I always ask questions before I take any type of job, but I want to see if what you're saying is going to be what is done. I always ask the church, what is the overall plan? What is the, where do I fit in? That's why I ask these questions. What is the church motto? What is the church model? And then I see if I fit that. And if I don't, I can just continue to look. But yeah, I've been in a situation where I was hired to be a musician. In fact, I was even hired to be a musician. I was helping them out until they found somebody. And then all of these restrictions were imposed about 2 or 3 months later, saying, this is what we need you to do. And I'm like, dude, I'm not looking for a 40-hour a week job, because I already have something I do during the week. I'm here to help you out, and I've already probably overstayed my stay. So, yeah, I run through that all the time.
So here it is right here. When I opened up, I talked about the faulty communication.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we're lacking with these 3 parties, because we don't really sit down and talk about, hey, this is really what we need you to do. Hey, and then the musician, this is really what I come to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think first thing we should probably do when you get a musician is you need to find out if they're saved or not. That's number one. I think you got to start with the relationship they have with Christ before you go any further in the conversation with a musician. And then you could probably address some of the expectations that you have of the musician, whether it's attire, how many rehearsals they're expected to have, and so on and so forth. So I think the issue with us as pastors, especially if you've been without a musician for a while, you just try to fill the void. And that's exactly what ends up happening. Now you have an employee that's operating like an employee. They come in, play a few songs, they go out, take a smoke break, have a conversation, sit in the fellowship hall, come back in the service, or what have you. So what's your take on that, Mr. Steve?
Well, yeah, I would agree. Conversation. You have to, if you want to get something out of anybody, I think it needs to be clear what that is, and that's both roles. I've been fortunate to be able to be a part of some great ministries, but I have experienced some negative ministries as well, because the dialogue did not take place, or what was said did not happen.
I think that if we get a level of understanding at the beginning, there'll be a lot of more issues less happen when we have an understanding at the beginning. A lot of time we don't get an understanding of what the church really needs, what the pastor is really desiring, or what the musician is really looking for. We just sit down and say, hey, I'm gonna come play, and that's gonna be it. What's my pay? And then they jump on the organ. We don't know what kind of relationship they got. We don't know what they're gonna come into our church with. We're not finding out what their beliefs are. So it's a lot of musicians feel like they actually have been taken advantage.
Right.
Because here's one thing about musicians, and I can speak on this because I was a musician before I was a pastor. Musicians have a way of feeling like all of the work that we do, we're underpaid, we're undercompensated for the work that we do, and sometimes I can understand that because as the church, we feel like we look at what we have opposed to the work that's been given, and without even acknowledging, hey, we're not able to do all that we should for the work that you do, or compensate for the skill set that you have. But we want to do different things to, show appreciation or this kind of thing. So I think a level of understanding has to be made at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Come on,
John B, what you finna say, baby?
Come
I
on.
heard that. What you finna say, Doc?
I'm always. Let me just say this, man. I'm always.
That's a T-shirt.
I don't always. I don't come on many people's lives because I'm considered to be quite controversial with my own marketing, my own stuff I do. So I'm conscious when I'm on somebody else's live of what I say and how I say it because it's not my show.
Well, let's see it, Doc.
All right. Yes, the overall goal and objective is to find a musician, a Levite, a minstrel that is saved, that has a heart for the ministry and for God and for the leadership and the vision of the house. The odds of you finding that,
Man,
is here's the reality. Here's the reality. I'm not saying that they can't, because there are wonderful musicians out there who are saved, who love the Lord, that are skillful. But I like to deal with reality. The Bible says in 1 Chronicles chapter 25, you all are pastors, so you can reference me. 1 Chronicles chapter 25, it says that David, along with some of the captains of the army, called together the sons of Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun for the ministry of prophesying on their instruments. All right. And it goes down verse 2, 3, and 4, 5. It lists all their names, what their skills was. Verse 6 and verse 7 is where it picks up. It says, all of these men were under the supervision of their fathers, who was under the supervision of the king, David. You go down to verse 7, it says, now, all of these men numbered 288. There's 288 musicians in the temple. And it says that they were skilled and trained for music in the house of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They said these musicians were skilled and trained for music in the house of the Lord.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that again. These musicians were skilled and trained for music in the house of the Lord. That's NIV version. If you do King James version, it says that all of these musicians were cunning in music. That's the King James version. Cunning, that word cunning deals with trickery, manipulation of atmosphere. All right. So all of these musicians were skilled and trained for music in the house of the Lord. One thing that I found interesting is nowhere in that passage of scripture did it say that they had to be anointed. Nowhere did it say they had to be saved. It just said they must be skilled and trained for music in the house of the Lord.
Okay.
But yet, one of the number one requirements we want to put is to say, man, are you saved? Yeah, okay. But is me being not saved lessen my ability to be skillful? I know many musicians that are wonderfully skillful, and they live an alternative lifestyle. I used to play secular as well as gospel music, me personally. And so my father was pastor, raised in church, this and the other. And one of the long-standing controversies that they always have, if you go out there, God gonna take your gift. Well, you have no scripture reference for that. If I can play Amazing Grace A flat minor, it's still Amazing Grace A flat minor and Beyonce Deja Vu. I'm not just gonna not know how to play just because I'm playing secular now. If I can play in the church, I can still go out and I'm still going to be able to play. You may not want me to go out and play secular, but just because I play secular, I'm just not going to randomly not know how to play, or I'm not going to randomly not be gifted or skillful to play. So when we look at hiring a musician or employing a musician, yes, you do want them to be skillful. You do want them to have a heart for God and be saved. But sometimes, my grandmama used to say, you gotta catch a fish before you can clean it.
Yeah, that's true.
And
that's true.
You may have, as a leader, and I don't want to overstep here, but sometimes as a leader, you may have missed your opportunity to have your best Levite because he didn't look like what you expected him to look like. You ask God for you ask God for an oak tree musician, and he gives you an acorn. Okay, I'm gonna say it again. You ask God for an oak tree musician, but he gives you an acorn. You say, God, this ain't what I asked for. He said, yes, it is. Just grow it. I'm gonna stop talking.
Wow.
I'm gonna stop talking. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna keep going.
That's good, man. That's good. You know, the skill part and the self-learned part, you know, is what most of the time is overlooked, because there's many hours that are put into learning a song, then, you know, figuring out how you're going to teach the song. You know, I was talking to a musician yesterday. When he started out charting his parts to teach. And he said he would have 2 or 3 pages going into one rehearsal. And I'm like, wow. He would have the words on there and the notes on there. It takes a lot of time and detail.
You know, you look at being a musician, but some may not know, I am a musician myself.
Okay.
Yes, I am it is true. Music took me all the way to college. Okay. And so we look at, we have different type of musicians. And so let's go back. Let's talk about it. The church. The church. We know that the church. We know that it's one body, many members. Okay? And everybody play a major role. They play a major part. So what I would ask Brother Steve is what should a church do in terms of seeking out such a great help of a musician?
Well, I would probably say, first of all, get a history on them. Find out what they did prior to coming to you or prior to you hiring them. Find out if they're stable. Because I think a lot of times we run into that problem. Musicians are, they hop all over the place. Wherever the next dollar is, that's where they go. Whoever's paying the most. And there's no loyalty, there's no faithfulness to ministry. So it's not ministry at that point. It becomes something else. So find out a little history, how many churches have you played for in the last 2 years, and kind of gauge what you're looking for, to even see if that is something you want to even tackle on, because it can be a problem. And the thing is, I think a lot of times musicians hurt ministries because people get used to people, It doesn't mean a person is bad because they mess up, but it still causes issues later down the road with, choir members and laymen and congregation, because they get used to a particular thing. And then if you don't meet that expectation, or you consider the church hopper, it just leaves a bad taste and a scar, on the whole thing. And so now the next person that comes along, they're already prejudged by something you did. So you may be the right person to fit the job, but now you got all of this stuff you got to try to live past because somebody else messed it up.
Yeah. What about this situation right here? What about a church, a musician? I feel like in 2020, I feel like, especially in our area, I think musicians are so scarce. Till now, we just, pretty much just allow anything to come in and sit on the organ just because we need somebody. And I feel like that's what's happening a lot of times. We don't care if they just came from the car smoking weed. We don't care if they walk out every Sunday on the message. We don't care if they're late every week. You know, a lot of times musician will cry out, "No, I'm hired, and you want to treat me like a professional." Well, let's be professional. A professional ain't gonna be late. A professional gonna come in with, you know, with their clothes not wrinkled up. They gonna look presentable. They gonna come in and do what they supposed to do and do it into a way that it is uplifting to God. That's the main thing. Is in worship, lifting up God's name through the worship.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wonderful that you mentioned that, but Brother John B said earlier, okay, and quote me if I may be wrong, because I was listening. Uh, he said that when he quoted the scripture, he said that basically that there was never a requirement of salvation. The requirement was skillful. You had to
Skill.
be skilled. You had to be skilled. So are we guilty, pastors? Because we're talking about the church,
Mm-hmm.
but are we guilty, pastors, of seeking out the skill versus than to save?
Wow.
That's a good
Because
question.
let's be real, we all want a nice, well put together musician staff because we know that it softens the heart, to receive the word, and we know that music, the universal language, that hey, some songs will make you cry, some will make you dance, some it's so good to you. So, are we guilty of seeking out the skill and not the save? What you got to say about that, John B?
Uh, yeah, very much so guilty because, and this is not an indictment on any of you pastors because I know y'all cool, but just we're talking as a large on the kingdom.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, this ain't no shade on y'all. Y'all good. We the good people on here. But on the kingdom as a whole, man, we've kind of created some monsters when it comes to musicians. First of all, musicians today, I've been doing this almost 30 years. I'm sure my brother on here, who was my other guest, I'm sure he's been doing it much longer than me. But the dynamics of the musicians today versus the veterans, I would just say, is much different. The millennials and these modern musicians, they have a sense of entitlement, to certain dollar amounts, which you really don't deserve because you're not even skillful enough to demand that, and you haven't put in enough time for that. When it comes to the accountability from the leadership part, that falls on leadership. If you allow a musician to come in your church and do anything that is contrary to what you would like, it's your fault because you continue to allow it. Prime example, you don't create a consequential environment. Let me say it like that. You don't create a consequential environment. Any one of us, any single one of us on here, we could go into a bank at any time and we could write them a little note and pass it to the teller and say, I want $100,000 out of your drawer. And she would give it to you. But you know why you don't do it? Because it's a consequential environment. If you do that, you're going to jail. Same thing at church. You haven't created a consequential environment, so your musicians do what they know they can get away with. So they're literally robbing you every Sunday because you're just giving it away. You're just letting it.
So then the question comes up, Carissa. My wife said, "Do you believe that a musician can make or break the service?"
Absolutely. A musician can make or destroy your service. And that's not from me, that's from the Bible. The Bible says that Satanas, Lucifer, the son of the morning, born to be crushed, all the names they give him. Satan was not the worship leader of church, of heaven. His job was to maintain the atmosphere of worship in heaven. Ezekiel talks about his tapestries, how he was made up, his stones, rubies, onyx that was in him. The Bible says, even in one verse, it says that he would reflect when Lucifer would stand up. And I'm trying not to turn a corner here. I'm really trying not to turn.
Now you're doing good. You're doing good. Stay right there.
The Bible says when Lucifer would stand up, because of all of his precious stones that were created with him, when he would stand up, he would actually he would be a reflection of the glory of God. The problem happened is one day Lucifer stood up and God saw Lucifer and did not see a reflection of his glory. Okay. Okay. So now we got a problem. Now we got a problem, because now you got the musicians or the singers say, "Oh, it's all about me." No, it's never been about you. Your job is to always reflect the glory and the atmosphere of God. But if you have a musician that has tainted hands, and they play in a sacred sanctuary, they're going to hinder that service, because there's a push in the atmosphere. There's a tension in the atmosphere because the leader is trying to go one place, but there's a struggle, there's a pull in the house. Well, that's because you need to check your musician corner. Find out what they playing up in here. They may be playing cancer up in this atmosphere, and you're trying to fight demonic warfare, but you can't figure out why you're doing it. But you done hired the wrong person over here. Prime example, and this is my last point, and I promise you I'm gonna stop talking. Think about your most favorite movie in the world. I don't care what it is. Your favorite, absolute favorite movie in the world. I don't care if it's a cartoon, a thriller, a horror, a comedy, whatever your favorite movie is. Just think about it. Get it in your mind. All right. Now, if I take your movie and take all of the music out of your favorite movie, you won't know how to feel in different scenes.
Wow. Wow.
You only know how to feel sad in a sad scene because of the sad music that's playing. You only know to feel scared in a scary movie because of the scary music that's playing. You only know to feel happy because of the happy music playing in the background. If I take all the music out of your favorite movie, you don't have a clue how to feel in the scenes. Same thing happens at church. The music sets a tone of how you're supposed to feel in this atmosphere.
Come on, man.
Okay.
Come on, man.
Wow.
I'm done. I'll give it to my.
I gotta say this.
Well, let me
it was one question. It was one question that was asked. It says, "How do you treat a dedicated musician? How do you treat a dedicated musician? A person that is there not because so much of money, but because he sees the vision of the pastor, and he wants to see of the church grow in that area because they are gifted and actually to use that gift." So how do we treat a dedicated musician?
You'd make him king, like David.
All right.
David wasn't even supposed to be king when the prophet came. His daddy said, "This all my boys." He didn't even recognize David. David was out in the field. He said, "You ain't got anybody else." Right. But because he was there, he was dedicated. Guess what? The oil poured on him. So you treat him like that. You got somebody that's dedicated. And again, I'm not trying to go there, but y'all.
No, you go it. Come on.
Y'all pulling on. Y'all pulling.
How do we appreciate pastors?
How do you do?
How do we appreciate as pastors? What's a good way to show appreciation? I've been in churches where it's not been common to have a musician appreciation. Is that a desire of the musician? I mean, personally, if you got a dedicated musician, I feel like we should do as much as we could possibly do as a pastor in a church for the musician, especially ones that can play both contemporary and old school music as well, because some of them that are coming in, they have a $400 expectation. They can't play Guide Me Over. They can't play Amazing Grace. But one that can, they are there on time. They might even show up to Sunday school. They might even be tithing. Now, those are not likely to find, but when you find one, how do we as ministers and leaders appreciate, or as a church appreciate the musician? Should we have an appreciation service for you? Either one of you guys can answer that, by the way.
I've been talking long
I would say,
yeah.
No, I would say, I mean, that's totally upon you. we did this thing a few years ago, and we had kind of like a round table for musicians. And what I discovered, a lot of musicians just want to be more than just a musician. And I say that because everybody doesn't, but they just want to feel like you value them outside of their gift. And I see that doesn't happen all the time. It's just like, and that's why we run across, you get musicians that only come to play and they go smoke or whatever they do while you're preaching, and then they come back and close it out. They're there just for the job, and they're not there for what's expected or should be expected of them as a person first, and then their gift. And I think if a musician could feel like their soul is important to you as pastors, I think it will go farther with them. And I'm on both sides of it too. And so I'm just kind of creating something because this is what was said in the meeting that we had, and I'm like, wow. But I get it because you can be at a church 2 or 3 years dedicated, doing all the necessary stuff, and maybe even beyond the necessary stuff. But you'll never ask, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Is everything okay at home? Are you making it? Do you need assistance, or what can we do outside of just provide you the tools you need for the church or for the position? What can we do to to make sure your soul is okay?
Mm-hmm. I would add.
So
I would add.
Yeah, go ahead.
To what Brother Steve was saying. I would say, being a musician all my life, having all kind of musician friends in both secular and gospel, one of the main things that everybody across the board always says is they rather be appreciated than just tolerated. Most musicians are just tolerated, but not appreciated.
Right.
Yeah.
And appreciation doesn't always have to equate to money, to dollars.
Exactly.
There's so many other ways, there's so many other ways you can value a musician and make him feel like he's really valued of being there. All right. Have you ever thought about this? I wrote this is not a plug, but it is a shameless plug. So I wrote a book, Flat While Music Fails in Church, and in this book I put a chapter in there that talks about people only come to church. People are initially attracted to church for 2 reasons: good preaching or good music. Good preaching or good music. Most churches don't have both.
This is true.
Most churches do not have both. I'm gonna say it again. Most churches do not have both. You either got a good preacher, music ain't so good, or you got good music and the preacher needs to study a little bit more. But most churches don't have both. So the reality of it is, on top of that, the 2 most recognized people in any ministry is the pastor and the musician. You know why? Because they are on stage before the people the entire time. Everybody in church know the pastor name. Everybody in the church know the musician name. Because these are the 2 most recognized people in association with that ministry. You ask a musician, hey man, who is that? Oh, that's John. He played for such and such church. Well, that immediately gives my identity to the church. Who is that? Oh, that's Pastor Jones. Oh, he pastor St. Mary. Your identity is tied to the church. And so these 2 individuals, the musician and the pastor, are the 2 most recognized. And watch this, oftentimes are the 2 highest paid individuals on salary.
Correct. So is there a power struggle between musician and pastor?
There's always been an eternal power struggle. Look at God and Lucifer. There's always been an eternal power struggle.
Bible.
There's always been an eternal power struggle. And here's the thing. The power is not even for money. The power is for influence.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, sir.
When Lucifer left, the Bible says he took 1/3 of the host of angels with him. Revelation says the dragon tail swept 1/3 of the stars from the sky. I don't mean to keep quoting scripts, but it's the preacher in me.
You're doing good, Doc. You're doing good.
And so it's the power of influence. You ever wonder why you fire a musician or he leave the church and then certain people leave with him?
Yeah.
Wow.
Power influence. Yes, sir.
Influence, man. It's the influence.
Wow.
Jump on in, Steve.
Oh, I'm messed up now. He done he done said it all. I mean, that's the synopsis of
We all messed up.
That's the synopsis of everything, what he just said. And that's the fight. That's the struggle. Who can influence the most? And that's the fight. And both positions are terrified of each other's position. That's the struggle. If I make him mad, he's going to do this, and if I make him mad, he's going to do this. You know, that's what the problem is. Wow.
Hey,
Wow.
can you guys?
So how do you build a relationship?
Can don't lose your thought, but can you go back to that last question that popped up on the screen about what do you do when the pastor is a musician or skillful musician? That right there is one of the most.
Let's talk about it.
That is one of the most interesting situations, because now you have a pastor who was a skillful musician who understands the job of the Levite, because he was a Levite, but he must now relinquish control to somebody else when he knows he himself is capable of doing it the way it needs to be done. So now the frustration comes in is that, now look, Joker, I know you ain't playing that song right because I can play the song right. You can't trick me. You can't trick a pastor who can play. You can't fake who can play.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So now it's the frustration of saying, I know this ain't right. I know my music department ain't right. And I'm still got to have the frustration of giving it to an individual who maybe is less qualified, because the pastor is a skillful musician. He ain't just a musician. He's a skillful musician. And so there's a tension there. And the pastor has to be able to, although he knows it ain't what it wants it to be, still back off and let them grow to what he knows the potential could be without overstepping and making the musician feel like, man, he all in the music department. You know, he all over here. He always coming, sitting in the rehearsals, telling us we ain't singing that right this Sunday. You know, pastor asked what we singing Sunday. You know, what y'all singing? What y'all rehearse? You know, to a musician, that becomes irritating.
Don't nobody want to be micromanaged.
Right, that's micromanaging. And here's the thing. In the pastor's vision, it's not really micromanagement. It's just that I served in that office for years, and I know what it takes to maximize it to its full potential, and you ain't there yet. So I'm trying to help guide you without micromanaging you. And that's always a tension and a fight right there. That's always a tension and a fight.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So when we look at that, what happens when maybe you have a skillful musician and a skillful pastor that is a musician, and you talked about it, you made the statement relinquishing that throne over to the person who you have in that position. When does the trust level start?
All right.
To say, this is what we hired you to do. This is your role. This is what we know that you're capable of. When do you, the pastor, relinquish that? As you said, the pastor would have to relinquish that. When is it time for that pastor to relinquish that?
Well, I think when the pastor is confident, fully confident that the individual is able to take it on full charge and literally enhance and advance the ministry to a level musically that it's never been, without being a hindrance to the vision of where the pastor is trying to go, both as a pastor and still musically minded person. When you have a skillful leader and a skillful musician, that's supposed to be the perfect marriage. It's supposed to.
It really is.
It's supposed to be the perfect match. The only thing, and I'll say this because I can say this personally because I know. Okay, last year, and Steve, you're down in Dallas, so you'll know. Bishop Marvin Sapp moved to Texas.
Right.
And his minister of music is Myron Williams. Now, I've played there many times because the guy that I travel with, Prophet Spreewell, we've been there several times. Matter of fact, the last time I was there was March 6th of this year. And to see both of them just flowing, Bishop Sapp and Myra, who are both singing, recording artists at the same
right.
The it's musically insane in there. I'm telling you, because
Yeah.
the flow, and I'm sitting there on the organ like, what?
Right.
Because it's like the perfect match, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how it's supposed to be. When you have
Yeah.
a singer or a pastor or a musician who is a leader, but you also have an equally matched Levite. It's supposed to be just heaven. It's supposed to be heaven. Supposed to be.
I would say it
Yeah.
should happen immediately.
Yeah.
And the reason I would say that, because it will probably never happen if you don't do that. And my thing is, you should trust the musician that you're bringing on. And I do know, you know, a relationship does have to take place if it's someone you don't know. But it's hard to relinquish something when you never let it go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel that it should happen immediately.
Yeah.
There it
You
is.
trust the process. You trust the process in which you just hired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's hard.
Wow.
I understand and I'm not a pastor, but I do understand it would be hard to, if you are a skilled musician and you've served in that capacity for X amount of years, to let it go, because you still have your love for it. It's still there. It's not now your first calling, you know what I'm saying? But it has to be something you have to trust the person that you have hired. Even if they make mistakes, even if they fail in some areas, you still have to trust their process to get in where you were or beyond where you were.
Right.
Absolutely.
You said, and Brother Steve, since you're right there,
Okay.
I want to ask you this question. I noticed that Miss Caressa Cooper, she said that the church relies on a lot of musicians. That they relies on a lot on the musician. I'm sorry, they relies a lot on the musician. And in one of her comments, she even stated that sometimes the church won't get started unless the musician is there. What do you think about that?
Well, that would be a problem with. Hold on. Hold on. I lost it. Okay. Well, that would be a problem with me. Am I there?
Put your camera back on.
Something happened. Okay.
Turn your camera back on.
Man, I'm pushing. Okay. Let me see.
We hear you. We just
Hey,
can't see you.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. You there. You Casper right now.
Lucifer messing with you. You talking about his apartment tonight.
No, something
He's
came up on
upside.
the screen. I was trying to clear the screen because I couldn't see.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. No, I forgot the question. See, when you get 50, that's what happens. 50 plus. Okay, let me think. Okay, hold on. Let me go back. So I think that's a problem to wait on anybody. I don't think we should wait on anybody. If God is there, what are we waiting on? We can miss opportunities that God have already set up by waiting on an individual. I wouldn't wait on nobody. I just wouldn't. I mean, hey, acapella, we haven't always had musicians. I know this is like, man, what are you talking about? You're a musician. Well, we haven't always had them.
Right.
So, we make do, and then we'll have that discussion after service. Hey, I need your own time. We're not going to wait for you no more. And if we have to continue to wait for you, then we'll find someone else.
Right.
Okay.
I believe we have to have, even with musicians, we have to have a certain order. I mean, 'cause like I said, anybody that runs blind is going to run into a wall after a while. I believe it has to be things established first off. Mm-hmm. And it's not micromanaging. I feel like if you give a certain standard, either they live by it or they don't, or they you get replaced. I mean, there's consequences with every job, even in corporate America. You miss so many days, you get the red tag or whatever you call it. you
right. You get those targets.
Yeah.
You get those targets.
Yes.
Yeah. You get those targets. John B, my man. John B. Huh?
What should a pastor do when he has? Go ahead. What you have to say, Johnson? I was just asking, what should you do when you run into a situation where you have a musician and they may have some issues that are now somewhat exposed, people can kind of see it or smell it. Let's say it that way. When your lifestyle is infiltrating inside the church, for whatever it may be, whether it's drinking, smoking, and we'll just kind of leave that open because it's not the pick. I'm just saying, as a pastor, speaking to have a pastor in a church, how do you assess the issue if you have a musician that may have a substance issue? How do you assess a situation like that? Or if you have an individual that comes in and they smell heavy on the drink. One thing we were presented with some weeks back, someone said, you pastors will just sit up here and hire anybody as long as they can play and key you up and get that shout music there, y'all just hire them. So where do you draw the line with either help or how do you assist if there is an issue? For instance, they need help with maybe drugs or alcoholism or so on and so forth. How do you deal with a musician that comes with issues? They're great, they love the Lord, but they have some issues. How do you deal with that?
Who you want to answer? Who you want to answer?
Yeah, who wants to answer?
So I'm asking, how do you assess it? Like, how much help is too much help? For instance, like if you're a pastor, like you know they got a habit, you pay them and they finna go straight to the spot. And your members are starting to come back to you saying, well, we've seen them at the R. We know they're doing. What are you doing that? Do you help this brother, get him some help and keep him on, or what should you do?
All right. So I'm gonna answer, and then I'll let my big brother Steve take it over. When I was on tour, I won't say with who, but when I was on tour with the secular artists, one of the first things they did before they gave me the job was I had to sign a contract. And inside of my contract, there was a highlighted clause, which was called a morality clause. And in the morality clause, it stated that as a musician and as an employee of this particular artist, there was a no fraternizing rule in the clause, which means the musicians can't date the background singers. You can't be sleeping with the background singers. You can't be banging the chicks that's on the mic. Because the problem comes in is that you're hired to do a job with this artist on tour. And if we're going to be traveling for these X amount of nights, this X amount of months to do a cohesive job as a tour, and y'all done been messing around and it don't work out, and y'all break up or she mad, now there is a divide on stage with chemistry. Okay, so they made me sign a morality clause, which said that I would not do this, that, and the other in taking this job. When it comes to churches, you don't have a morality clause when you hire musicians, or you don't give them a code of conduct when you hire musicians. You just hire them because they can play. Well, that's your fault. Because when you go to shoot, even if you go to fill out an application at McDonald's, they're going to give you an employee handbook. Mm-hmm. They'll tell you what you can and cannot do in McDonald's. You can't come in here and work at McDonald's wearing a Burger King uniform. Okay, I'm going to say it again. You cannot come to work at McDonald's wearing a Burger King uniform. Now, we told you this before we hired you. You can't come in here drunk. You can't come in here high. Any of these actions are cause for immediate termination. Once you tell a musician this, once these individuals have this up front, they already have a notion of what they can't do. I say it all the time. Church is the only place people come try to act crazy and get away with it. Church is the only place people come try to act crazy and get away with it. They don't do this nowhere else. They don't do this nowhere else. You cannot bring your cell phone. You cannot bring your cell phone in a court of law. They stop you when you go through the metal detector. Put your phones over here. You can't even come in and dress a certain kind of way. You got to dress a certain kind of way when you go into court. But yet, we let you just come in church looking however you want to come in church. We let you come in church staying on your cell phone while you're supposed to be playing. We let you come in church smelling high, drunk. We know you done slept with at least 3 chicks in the choir, but I'm going to just turn a blind eye to that because you can play. Now, where's the code of conduct here? Where's the morality clause? Where is the consequential environment that you have set up as a leader for your employees? Because you got to remember, he's an employee, but you got to protect him from the sheep. Okay. All
wow.
right. All right. Now I'm dipping into another side of this, but this is what we don't oftentimes want to confront. Now, if you know he got an issue, if you know he got an issue, she got an issue, they got an issue, then as the leader, you take them into private counsel and you say, listen, I ain't crazy. I know you drinking. I know you got a problem drinking this and the other. So here's what's going to happen. You can't do that here. And so if you need help, we're going to put some things in place to help you. But now, if we put these things in place to help you and you continue to display this behavior, then you just got to go. You just got to go. You just got to go.
All right. Let me ask this question. Hey, John B., while you're there, a very important question came up, and I want to try to answer all the questions. I will not be biased. I will ask every question because I want to make sure that we get help tonight. Look here. It says, how should a musician be treated that meets the demands of the church, always travel with the pastor, makes all rehearsals, funerals, and programs? He says, seriously, you pastors have opened this up. The question for you is, do you have a certain respect of the musician? So how should the church treat that musician that are doing basically everything that you ask them to do?
Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's breaking up so bad I didn't even understand what he just read. And then I don't know if that's my internet or what. It just broke. The whole thing was broke up.
It say, how should a musician be treated that meet the demands of the church, always travel with the pastor, and always there for every program? So basically, he says, I'm doing what is asked of me. I'm doing what is required of me. He say, how should he or she be treated?
Oh, I'm going to borrow this like a king.
That's a good answer.
I'm going to use that until
That was
Jesus
a good
comes
answer.
back. I'm going to use that until Jesus comes back because that sets a merit. You know, you value what you know you have.
Yeah.
You value what you know you have, but you got to know what you have to value it.
Good.
That's good. Last night, we was talking about pastors knowing their value. I think it's important that a musician should know their value as well. I know a few musicians here that, okay, if they have made a certain amount at a church, they're not going to go any lower than that. Because why? They know their value. I think it's important that we know our value. What do you bring to the table? What can you enhance in this ministry? What can you bring to make this ministry better? If you know the value that you bring, I think you would know the value that you have as a person.
Let me ask here. Well, I'll say it and I ask. Value is important. The problem with value is when it comes to musicians, most musicians have absolutely no clue of what their value is until somebody else puts a price on them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most musicians have absolutely no idea of what their value is until somebody else puts a price on them. And so now, if I paid you $350 a week for playing at St. Mary's Baptist Church, and that's the most money you ever got paid for playing for somebody, then wherever you go from now on, that's going to be your base of where you tell people, oh man, I charge $350. Why? Because that's what the last person paid me. So my value is now contingent on what the last person put a price on me as. Now, here's the conflict with them. Depending on how long it's been since the last time you was employed, you may have depreciated value. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Wow.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. You may have depreciated value. Listen, don't come to me asking me, hey man, I need $500 a week to play. But you ain't played in 6 months. Something wrong with that picture already. If you was really that valuable, why you ain't had no job in 6 months? Because there's no demand on your skill. And if there's no demand for your skill, why are you placing such a high price on your value?
Correct.
Wow. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
That is so true, man.
Wow. I have another question. Another question here.
He's asking a lot of questions here on tonight.
He asked a lot. He asked them reference.
I'm asking the questions because again, we want to help somebody here tonight, and the people are asking questions, and we want our followers and our viewers to know that we appreciate you, and your questions does count. So this question, it says, how do pastors feel about musicians playing at different churches and not committing to one ministry? It say, how do pastors feel about musicians playing at different churches and not committing to one ministry?
Wow. Okay.
That's on y'all. Y'all the pastor. That's on y'all.
Yeah, I'm not a pastor.
That's on y'all. Y'all gotta answer that.
Well, here it is. Me coming from the musician background, I understand that some musicians only make money through their playing. Now, if we don't have anything to do, and there's another opportunity for you to make some more money, why should I have a problem with that? Now, the conflict is when you decide when we got to go somewhere, now you want to go somewhere else because you feel like this is going to pay more than what I'm getting over here. I think that's what conflict comes in.
Oh, man.
Carlos, what you say?
Well, I'll agree with you on that. The situation I've seen where when they play, it doesn't last long because it's kind of hard to be in two different locations serving up on the two pastors and two ministries. I haven't seen anyone successfully do it. Personally, I haven't seen a musician play at Mount Olive and then play somewhere else and maintain. Eventually, one or two things happen. They stay with us for a little longer and eventually leave, or they leave right away, depending on how much more they got from us. So I don't see how you can be committed to two locations.
There's some opportunities where somebody has a 9 o'clock service, somebody has 11 o'clock service, that they'll be able to do both. We have some in the city that have been there for years, more than 5, 6 years doing the same thing at two churches. And so I don't think the church should have a problem with that musician trying to make a living for himself doing what the Lord has given him.
Now, let me say this.
I agree.
I believe that some musicians are truly in it, for real. They are truly in it for the betterment of the ministry. I've known some guys that have been helping out at this church. Hey, if it's early in the morning, I'm already up. I help out over here, regardless if for some a great amount, for some little to nothing, in some cases free, because that ministry is not requiring as much. So I think it's really based on the need of that ministry. Some ministries require more than others. So if the ministry requires more, what I mean, you might have some guys, I think the correct terminology is MD, right? Mm-hmm. Music director, or fine arts and worship director or something like that. That means that person Anything that's dealing with the curriculum of music, theater, Easter plays, all those things in that church, and they're required to, and then they have a staff. That's when you go over to the maker side. But normally in most of our traditional churches, you have just the keyboard and the drums. You have choir rehearsal on Thursdays or Wednesday nights. If the pastor have a 3 o'clock program, everybody they can go. I think when you hire a musician for the church, most people think that it's only just for Sunday morning. So the question to John B and Steve or anybody that's watching, most musicians say, "Hey, this what you pay me for is really for Sunday morning." That's the mindset. A rehearsal, Sunday morning. Some may feel like you got to go preach. Ain't nobody tell you to take all them revivals.
But see,
ain't nobody tell you to go all them.
I think that's where the understanding has to come in, though. I think that's where understanding has to come in. The communication.
I heard that one.
Yeah, the communication and the understanding at the beginning has to be there. So both parties would know what to expect. Everybody has their own stories. I don't actually have a musician at my church. We usually use tracks or hoop triggers or whatever. But during the pandemic, I've had musicians come to help me and won't take a dime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
That's a blessing.
Right.
Now, everybody can't say that. Everybody can't give that testimony.
Right.
And so you have some that are out here that are hirelings, and you have some that are out here actually being servants of God. This is a wonderful
conversation. Props. My musician offered to take a pay cut during the pandemic, so I just want to thank my musician right now, man. Brother Tennyson said he's willing to take a pay cut, both my musician and guitar player. So let me just get that disclaimer inside the pastor study. My musicians, we're great.
That's awesome. Well, since you're giving that disclaimer, I want to give a shout out to every. You had your turn. It's mine, baby. I just want to give a shout out to actually. I've been blessed here at the Dale Chapel Church. During my tenure year as pastor, I've had some great musicians that when we call on them, they will still come to this day. Let me name a few. I started off with Brother David Patterson. I can't forget about Dominic Carzoli. I can't forget about LePatrick Thomas. I can't forget about who's here with us now. Brother Greg Seaton Jr., Aubrey Walker, all those guys that have been. And what I love, the relationship that I have with those guys, is that we ain't always agree, but I call them today, and if they ain't got nothing going on, sure, Bishop, I'll come help you out, and they won't even say a price. They'll just show up. Now, we're gonna do right by them, and because that is their time. But I want to thank you guys because we've always been able to do something. Oh, and Monica Howard Loggins. That's right, Monica Howard Loggins. Now, Monica, my mail course ain't sung right since you left, girl. They won't give no musician, but they will only sing for Monica Howard Loggins. And also, let me say, one who's watching tonight, Brother Gary Blevins, who started playing at the Dale Chapel Church. So we've had some. Whenever we call,
see, now you finna make some folk mad in the city, so we ain't gonna go there.
I'm just saying, hey, relationship. We're talking about it, right? Relationship means a lot. I know a lot of great musicians. Saul Gates, TJ, Pastor Rodney Long. Did I say his name right? No. Reginald Long. I'm sorry, I gave him a whole new name.
Start messing up when you call the name.
Reginald Long. Reginald Long, great musician, great guy.
But you know what? This is awesome. We need to have more conversation about the relationship between the pastor and the church, and conversations where come about, I think better relationships would come, and we'd have more peace instead of more confusion in our churches and in our music departments. Let's get our final thoughts and final words from our guest, Brother Steve. Give us your final word and final thoughts on this conversation on tonight.
Write the vision, make it plain. You can't err if it's written down. You can't err if it's written down. And have somebody sign it, notify it, whatever they need to do to justify it and to make it plain. If you can read,
that's good. No error. That's good, Doc. That's some good stuff right there. Brother John, thank you so much for coming. Come on and give us your final thoughts and your last comments.
Final thoughts would just simply be mathematics. And I'll say this and then I'll stop. Mathematics. As a piggyback to your last topic, Pastor Collins, it is impossible. It's just mathematics. It's impossible to take one musician, divide him into 3 churches, and come out with a whole commitment. It's impossible. You cannot take one musician, divide him into 3 churches, and expect to come out with a whole commitment. That never will work. When it comes to appreciation and caring for your musicians and compensation, as leaders, I would encourage you to really look at what it is you're paying your musicians to do and why you're paying them to do it. Again, mathematics. Most churches have service on Sunday morning, they have a Bible study, and then they have a rehearsal. Before the pandemic, that's how we was operating. We do a Sunday morning service, 2 hours, let's just say 11 to 1. We do a midweek Bible study, 7 to 9, and then do a choir rehearsal, let's just say 7 to 9. Well, that's totals for the musician, 6 hours of work. Let's just say I'm paying a musician $500 a week. Now, that may be high in your area. In my East Coast, that's kind of the norm in my city for average musicians, 5 a week. All right. If I'm paying a musician $500 a week for 6 hours of work, that mathematically breaks down to me paying you $83.33 per hour. That's attorney fees that you're paying for a musician who don't even have a degree in music. Just think about that. You're paying
mathematics.
Just mathematics, y'all. Just the mathematics. Just look at what you're paying a musician and break down the hours of how much they're actually working and seeing what they're getting paid per hour. Oftentimes, they get paid attorney fees or doctor fees. And most musicians that play for our churches don't even have a degree in music. They're just skillful at it. So look at the whole situation differently. I'm a musician's advocate. Most people call me very controversial, but I don't play favorites. I deal with the reality of it. I'll call a musician out when they're wrong. I'll call them out when they're right. But as leaders in this conversation of bridging the gap between the pastors and the minstrels and trying to make a perfect marriage, sometimes we have to look at it differently. Be willing to give some as well as give a little bit. You know, musicians ain't perfect. None of us are perfect. We're trying to get there. But at the end of the day, if you got a guy who's faithful to you or a girl who's faithful to you and they want to see you win, take care of them. Take care of them. That's what I would say.
That's good.
That's it.
Pastor Joe?
Pastor Collins, give us your final thoughts.
I don't know what happened. Okay. Oh, man. Well, we're just thankful for having these 2 giants on here on the show tonight. Both of them, they look so modest and so poised all at the same time, man. We appreciate you guys for coming on and sharing your insight. And we don't know a whole lot. Obviously, we're pastors. I like to try to stay in my own lane. So, you know, I appreciate musicians, especially those that appreciate what they do and what God has called them to do. So we thank you guys for your service. because we know there's like all preachers ain't out preaching for money. All musicians aren't out there for money. Just like you end up with some bad preachers, they ain't always bad musicians. So I think a lot of time when we get burned once, we just kind of put that on everybody that comes in after, and then people kind of have to reap what somebody else did. But we need to just hit the restart button and learn how to treat everybody and get a great understanding from the beginning. So we appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Thank you, Jonathan, for coming inside the pastor study on tonight. Gave us great insight from a musician's behalf. And you know, us pastors, we're sitting here listening so we can get a better understanding as well with our relationships. And I think that's where the betterment of the church will become when everybody sits down and listen to get a better understanding. On tonight, if you were blessed by this conversation, if you want to sow a seed on tonight, sow a seed, $2, $3, $4. There's our Cash App on the screen. You got the information. Let's go ahead and be a blessing to the kingdom. Thank our guests for coming. Pastor Johnson is going to take us out.
Well, my friends, I am so happy tonight. Hopefully something was said that makes you feel a whole lot better, that makes you feel good, that makes you feel like that you can soar and that you will be prosperous. Remember, we're talking about the church, the pastor, the musician, bringing it together. And this lesson will be to be continued. But right now, we got to leave you. From Western Plains to Eastern Hills, this is Marcus K. Jones. The other host is Pastor M.L. Collins. And I am Marshall, the Bishop Johnson. And you've been inside the Pastor Study. God bless you.
Have a good night, y'all.
God is doing a great work. He's doing a great work.